All right. Welcome back to the Cultural Curriculum Chat podcast, the space where we bridge creativity, culture, and courageous conversations. My guest today is a celebrated choreographer, director, educator, and author whose career spans dance, theater, embodiment work, and transformative artistic mentorship. She is a former company member with the legendary Bill T. Jones and Arnie Zane Dance Company. She is the director of the Alexandra Bell Dances and a longtime professor at universities across the country. Her artistry and leadership have helped shape countless dancers, theater makers, and storytellers over the last 2 decades. She is also the author of two powerful books on the creative process, The Embodied Conductor, and her newest work, The Anatomy of Art Unlocking the Creative Process for Theater and Dance, a poetic and practical field guide that challenges artists to break habits, trust themselves, and create with meaning, bravery, and joy. Whether she's choreographing, directing, or teaching, she blends rigor, deep care, and embodied wisdom into the beautiful, messy work of making art. So let's welcome today Miss Alexandra Beller. Welcome, Alexandra.
Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, thank you for being a guest. So I want to just dive right in. I was telling you just before we started to hit record, I am just a fan already. I've been watching your videos. I'm also a studio dancer in my previous life from fifth grade. Sorry, mom, to all the tap dances growing up with my little sisters. So to just talk with another fellow dancer and creative, I'm just so honored that you're here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, so let's get into it. Alexandra, what inspired you to write your current book, The Anatomy of Art? And what do you hope artists feel or understand after they read it?
Mm, Thank you for that question. I was giving a lot of feedback and artistic mentorship to artists, particularly choreographers, and I found myself via the critical response process, which is a feedback process developed by Liz Lerman and John Borstel, um, which in which questions are the dominant driver. I found myself just constantly asking artists questions as opposed to giving opinions because I'm not a huge fan of opinions in the artistic feedback process.
Mm.
I feel like when we're trying to really center artists and invite them to develop their intuition and trust their voice and deepen their autonomy, I'm not trying to get them to meet an idea or a standard or an aesthetic that I'm interested in or that I like. I'm trying to get them to be the most themselves and meet their own goals for themselves. And so I found myself just asking questions and questions. And often I would ask a question in a group and I would just feel the room change a little. I'd feel people just sit up, or I'd hear a little intake of breath, or somebody's eyes would light up. And I started feeling like there are some good questions. I should write these questions down. So I started writing the questions down. And I thought, oh, I'll write a book of questions for artists and it'll be transformative. And as I started writing them down, I was like, on their own, they feel both a little bit like I'm hiding, like I'm not making a statement, just asking questions. Um, and also, yeah, they felt they lacked vulnerability and they lacked
Mm.
context. And I kept feeling worried that, the question wouldn't meet particular artists. So does this question speak to everybody? No, of course, no question speaks to everybody. No anything speaks to everybody, right? We need
Yeah.
this diversity to be able to meet the three-dimensional nature of humanity. So I was like, oh, I'll write an essay. And so I had these categories of questions about time, questions about space, questions about meaning. And I started writing essays on these topics. And then I felt like, well, I don't just want to say things and ask things. I want to have them do things. So then I started writing these embodiment exercises. And then I was like, well, it's not just about the body, it's also about this practice. Okay, I started writing praxis exercises, like exercises in which you practice doing something but without any intention to make a product. But then I was feeling like, oh, but these are artists who want to make a product. So then I was writing scores, and it just ballooned out over, honestly, a decade. Like, I've been off and on working on it for 10 years, and now it's finally in at Bloomsbury, and it comes out in June. So it just ballooned out over all that time to feel like I wanted to meet artists at every different part of their process. So, to the second part of your question, what do I want artists to feel? I'm never a fan of like hoping that somebody feels a particular way, because
Oh,
it can
yeah.
be encroaching. But
Hmm.
I hope that they are able to find that feeling you get when you have a mentor who really sees you, and you feel seen, you feel met, you feel challenged, but in a way that is exciting. That way that when you get challenged and you're like, oh, I want to try that. Yes, that sounds hard, in the most delicious way. Um,
Yes.
I hope that they feel challenged, but not in a fatiguing way. Inspired is such a overwrought and cliched word, but there, I talk in the book about what inspiration really is, which is breath, right? That word inspiration is to take
Yes.
in breath towards life. So I hope that they take the book in towards life, towards their
Yes.
liveliness, aliveness, artistic aliveness.
I love that, Alexandra. And another thing about what you're saying with that embodiment of understanding who they are and their own purpose, I really like how you touched on that one question isn't for everybody. And, the different lenses that they see and interpret it different ways. And as artists, we are vulnerable. We're vulnerable on stage or in our artwork. And, that's our gift to humanity, like you said. And even that process of writing, the book, it takes time to even see how you, as the creator of this book, to be a mentor for the world. That's a big feat. It's not something you do overnight, my dear. So give yourself two, three pats on the back, because that's a hard and a beautiful artistry in yourself to interpret that with all of those dancers and artists that you've met. My other question to you, when you're talking about that embodiment piece and having those types of questions, Alexandra, by working with these artists and dancers and seeing them sitting up taller and feeling like they can be themselves, is there a time when you're asking those questions that they actually have to sit and reflect in their own process?
100%, and it's why it was daunting, because of what you were talking about before. Like, there's such immediacy to asking, seeing somebody's art, and I have a question right now about what I just saw. That feels so intuitive. This idea of like sitting in front of a screen and being like, what's a question for an artist whose work I've never seen, in a moment that I have no idea about, that's going to break through that, is like very,
Yes.
very challenging, daunting. But on the other hand, I think one thing, sorry to diverge, but one thing, like, I think we
Okay.
discovered in the pandemic around teaching virtually, there were all of these drawbacks, of course, but there were also all of these gifts. And one of the gifts was people had their own space and they had their own time, and they didn't always have to be seen while they were processing something. And there was such a beautiful inclusivity that I think all of us that were teaching over Zoom during the pandemic discovered, this ability to meet more people in more ways through this distance and through this bit of separation. That, not everybody thrives on the immediacy and the um, the connection in the room, and being watched and being part of something is not for everybody all the time. Sometimes people need that solitude and ability to silo and take space. And when I'm teaching movement classes, I'm always always urging people not to follow my timing and to say, look, always prioritize your body, your needs, your spirit over my phrase or my phrasing. And so,
Hmm.
if I'm doing something and you're like, wait, I need to try it again. Don't follow me. Don't keep up with me. Go on a tangent. I will be so happy to see you like cycling on something and repeating something because you needed that time rather than being like, I don't really know, but I'm keeping up with you because I'm in a class with you. I never want that. And so the book does give like this mode of a book does give this opportunity for people to take the time they need, to slow down, to not be witnessed. And I think that that is a space that's quite a precious space that I'm really excited to meet people in.
I can't wait to get a copy of this book because it is that self-reflective piece that we do need that own time to take in breath and depth. And I love how you're like, move at your own pace. This isn't a race. This isn't a tangible thing for you to feel like you owe me to keep up. You have your own movement in this world. Oh my goodness. And speaking of that, like, trusting yourself in that creative process. How do artists begin cultivating that trust? Because that takes time, especially as a choreographer. And like we're there to do the movement, the project, the phrasing. And you're telling me the opposite of trusting my own self in
Yeah.
this. Like, how does that work? Yeah. How do
Yeah.
artists begin cultivating their own trust?
Yeah, intuition is a really hard one resource, inner resource, and it's something that we are conditioned out of from very early on. And I have been on a little soapbox about intuition being our sixth sense, that got um, like diverted from our conditioning. So from when we're very young, I mean, if you just think about like health as an example, you are a child and you go to the doctor and they might ask you a couple questions, but for the most part, they are coming from the outside and they're taking metrics from the outside, your temperature, your weight, your height, your thing, what you look like. There's very little eliciting that inner information. And that goes through our education system, some of our parenting, um, and our socialization. Like so much of it is outside in. And so much of dance and theater too are this outside in. Do this, look like this, meet this standard, meet this goal, meet this metric, um, get this grade, perform or behave like other people. It's all this outside stuff. And I wonder if we, could see a parallel universe in which all of that conditioning was swapped and the inner metrics were the drivers for information. And, of course, we still have medicine, technology, etc. But we're asking children like, what does it feel like when you breathe? What about when you get scared? What does your breath feel like then? Where's your heart? Do you know where your heart is? What does that feel like? Do you ever feel your heart beating? What does your skin feel like? What does your temperature feel? And we were really like collecting inner metrics from when kids were pre-verbal till they, went to college and prioritizing their lived experience over our outer reflection of them and telling them about themselves. What I believe that intuition truly would have developed, evolved in our species as a sixth sense that is as functional as sight and hearing and touch and taste and smell. And, we sort of tongue in cheek kind of call it our sixth sense. Oh, yeah, it's our sixth sense, like in quotation marks. But I think it
Yeah.
actually, as a species, like you look at animals, they obviously have a sense that we don't
Oh,
have.
yes.
Yeah. And
Yes.
it's not just hearing and it's not
Mm-mm.
just whatever, their version of touch is for cilia or whatever. There's like a thing that they get and you see it in their nonverbal communication. They have a sense that we don't have. And I think
Mhm.
we would call it intuition. So when I'm
Yeah.
talking to artists about trusting themselves, what I'm really
Yes.
talking about is amplifying and feeding the sense of intuition. So you can get better at vision, you can get better at hearing. It's not necessarily that the physics or the metrics of your cones and your rods get better. You don't necessarily get better than your 20/40 vision, but you can be more perceptive, right? You can see more, you can take more in, you can notice more, you can appreciate more through vision or through hearing, etc. Same thing with intuition. You can
Hmm.
actively and consciously develop your intuition. And it's not like this blanket, like, I'm just going to trust myself more, because that is so amorphous. What are you doing?
Mm.
But when you're cooking and you taste what you've made and you're like, something's not quite there. What is it? And you're searching in some part of your neurology for, like, what do I need? What does it need? Salt. Let me just salt. And you put a little salt and you're like, yeah, it's salt and it needs a little more. And that feeling. You can
Yes.
feel it. You can taste it, right? That's your intuition. That's your creative intuition and artistic intuition. And certain places in our life we have it easily, and other
Yes.
places we second guess ourselves or our inner critic interrupts us. So
Yeah.
I feel like there is this kind of weightlifting around intuition, where we're starting to honor
Yes. Yeah.
that inner sense. And there are a couple things that I feel like are easy interrupters of intuition. One of them is arrogance.
Oh,
Um,
yeah. I see
and
that.
I
Yeah.
feel it in myself when I'm like, oh, I'm
Hmm.
having an intuition, and then I get enamored with myself for having this. Oh, I'm having this psychic feeling, and I know what's going on. And the minute I'm like, oh, I know something, it's gone. Right? I've killed the intuition. It's such a delicate ride to ride our
Yeah.
intuition, and so there's something about living in that space that's an ethereal space between knowing and not knowing. And it's not that full on not knowing, which is also a great place to be. And it's not that, like, deep knowing, which is also a great place to be.
Yeah.
But it's this space between them, and putting ourselves in that space and asking ourselves to reckon with the discomfort of staying
Hmm.
in the, like, I think so. I'm not sure. I'm gonna see how this is going. And often it's a slowing down that's required for that,
Yes.
which is one of the greatest feeders of intuition, is changing our tempo. We are
Hmm.
universally asked to go too fast, faster than we can feel, intuit, or process.
Yes, agreed. And that stillness is a luxury, but it's something that should be inherent in us to slow down. And I'm right there with you when you're talking about that intuitive force and that helps with your emotional intelligence. If something doesn't feel right, I need to slow down. Like you said, that sixth sense has always been there, and trying to be in that ethereal space, like you said, to be in the flow and keep moving forward. I love that. Thank you. So, speaking of being in the flow and trusting yourself, when we're talking about that feedback, I loved how you talked about, your works with Laban and Bartanif and those systems of those deep questioning. Feedback can be tricky, especially artists. We wear our hearts on our sleeves, our toes, our foreheads, everything. So when you are trying to critique an artist, how do you review in an honest and useful way that doesn't hurt our ego? You know what I mean? That's a
Yeah.
big question. Yeah.
And I
How do
have a
you
whole
give that
chapter
feedback?
and I have a
Yeah.
whole chapter in the book on feedback methods. Um, One of the best feedback methods that I've come across, and this is something that a lot of dancers practice, is via Liz Lerman. It's called critical response process. It's an artist centered process in which there are four events. And the first one is called statements of meaning, which In some older school thing, they'd be like, say something that you liked. It's not as cookie cutter as like say something you liked. It's like what moved you, what intrigued you, what were you curious about. Even something I've sat there and I've watched a work, and I'm like, I had a really tough time with that. I it it hit me in a lot of places not well, or it felt boring, or whatever it was. I still have something to say in that moment of like,
Yes.
I thought it was really, even a piece where I'm like, that duration almost killed me. I'm like, there was a lot of bravery in that duration. That is absolutely true. There was bravery in it. And the bravery in that moment might be like, you might hate this. And I did, but somebody else
Mm-hmm,
won't,
mm-hmm.
and you don't. Or maybe you
Exactly.
do. That let's have a
Yeah.
conversation about it. So statements of meaning and giving some kind of it's not unequivocally positive, but it is like I am going to search this work for something that feels like it resonated, it landed, it stayed with me, it sparked something. So that's the first thing, statements of meaning. The very next thing is questions from the artist. And
Mm.
they get to frame the feedback. And if you do one thing with feedback, forget everything else I'm going to say here, let the artist frame the feedback. And I I always really say, what kind of feedback are you interested in? If they don't know what that means, I'll give them options. Sometimes the feedback is just, I just wanted to witness. I wanted to sit here and do what I was doing in front of somebody. I received feedback from your presence and your witnessing. That's all I wanted. I don't want anyone to even say anything. Great. That's wonderful. That's where you're at. You get to define that. Sometimes they might just want statements of meaning. Somebody might want something like, um, pictures. Sometimes I'll say, like, we could draw you pictures of like something that stayed with us. Uh, I give the option that like we could go choreograph a tiny little sequence that's like, this is what struck me. I don't remember exactly what you did, but this was a feeling I got in my body, and I'm going to dance the feeling for you. Right. So it does
Wow.
not have to be verbal feedback, even. Then
Yes.
once you get to verbal feedback, um, I want to know what the artist needs, which is why they ask questions. So depending on what stage they're at, they might say, I'm having a lot of trouble with this relationship. Does it feel like they are really familiar with each other, or does it feel like that familiarity is earned? Do you feel any kind of history? I'm curious. I've tried to work on that, but I'm not sure if it's coming across. Tell me more about what you're feeling about their relationship. Great, let's talk about that. And then
Yes.
they'll get the information they actually need. The third part of Liz Lerman's method is called neutral questions from the audience. And when I say neutral, what she's talking about is leaching opinion out of your question. So, why was that section so long? Is an opinion,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
What you need to do is not just figure out the syntax so that it doesn't sound like an opinion. What you need to do is a lot harder work as somebody who's giving feedback. You need to actually not care about your opinion. So
Yes.
it's an act of decentering yourself. And
Yes.
you're saying, yeah, that felt really long to me. That information is not even necessarily useful to this artist. Partly because, like, I'm one person. There are,
Mm-hmm.
countless people, right? So my one experience watching your piece is not necessarily useful. Um, and what I really need to do is get curious enough, truly curious, where I'm like, yeah, I hated the length of that. It was very, um, like, it felt maddening. I felt really frustrated. I started to get angry watching it because it went on so long. I wonder why. I wonder what this artist wanted out of that. I had such a strong response to it. I'm really curious. What, what was your intention around that duration? Like, I'm deeply curious. The way that I am sometimes curious about what's behind somebody's racism or somebody's
Mm-hmm.
misogyny, I'm like, yes, I can get offended by it. I can get angry at it. I can be, and I can fight them on. But, if I were in a higher place, what actually might turn something over is if I could actually be like, what's happening for you there when you're looking at somebody and having this
Reaction.
reaction?
Hmm.
What's happening, or what happened to you, or what are you
Hmm.
afraid of, or what
Yes.
do you not understand, or what are the feelings, what's under that? Because
Mhm.
just talking at the intellectual topic, it doesn't move us as humans, right? So
Yes.
I need to do that with myself. It's similar to the work that we're doing in anti-racism and starting to kind of decommission the patriarchy and to see
Hmm. Hmm.
capitalism for what it is. And in
Hmm.
that, I have to, like, again, slow down and say, okay, what if I was not the central figure in this moment? What if I could get really curious? And so for me, feedback isn't ultimately as an act of empathy, because I'm really trying to understand this person in front of me. Um,
Yes.
I can't say that I get to that level with some of the isms, because I do get more activated when
Oh
I'm
yeah.
dealing with the isms.
Oh
When I'm
yes. Yeah, I
dealing with
get
an
it.
artist with their, little, like, soft artist heart, it
Hmm.
elicits like a lot of empathy right away. So that's a much more natural place for me to live with an artist than it is for me to live with a racist.
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm.
so I would say there are tons of methods, and then there are a lot of indigenous and diasporic practices around feedback that are less about the verbal expression. Um, Adrienne Marie Brown has practices around feedback, and there are some, like, really beautiful indigenous practices I also write about in the book, um, that have other ways, like there are other senses and other um, parts of our relationship and ways that we meet each other in relationship that are not about, I'm thinking this and I'm going to tell you what I'm thinking. And
Yeah.
the other thing is, like, not everything that's in my head needs to come out of my mouth.
Mm. That should be the mantra for next year.
Yeah.
That should be in every corporate office. I feel you so much on that, Alexandra. And you're right. I love how you reframe it, like having those, statements of meaning, asking the artist, how do they want the feedback received from them? Because again, that lens of what you might have and your motivation to get to your point across, they also might have something like, I wanted you to be angry in this piece. I wanted you to have this visceral
Yeah.
reaction. Doggone it, I did it. I got like I did that piece because I want my whole audience to feel this angry. Maybe this is this passion of my own lived experience that I want you all to feel
Yeah.
and receive at that moment.
Yeah.
And that to me is huge versus your own lens going, mm-mm, I didn't like that too long, da 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 da,
Right.
and then just dismiss them and what they wanted to convey to
Exactly,
you as well.
which is steeped in assumption, right? I'm assuming what
Yes.
you wanted. I'm assuming your goal, your intention, your feeling, your
Hmm.
style, your aesthetic, your preferences.
Yeah.
I'm making a ton of assumptions about that, and then I'm having an opinion. No, my opinion is based on my preferences. So
Hmm.
it's fairly useless in somebody else's art. What I can do is reflect back things I see, and once I hear what they want, I really wanted this duet to be this, like, super intimate thing. Oh, interesting. Okay, I did not experience it that way. Let's look at maybe some of the reasons why. Well, they're actually really prioritizing the audience and not prioritizing each other. You put them right at
Hmm.
center, which makes them feel like they're, like, very framed for our pleasure or for our viewing, which makes it feel like it's actually about me and the audience. It doesn't make me feel like it's about them and I'm coming to them. So what if we
Hmm.
offset them a little bit and back them up a little bit? What if we turn them slightly away from the audience, and we there was a little bit of a secret that the audience wasn't quite privy to, but we were curious about it? What if we tried XYZ? Um, there's also something about, yeah, they were intimate, but um, there was a kind of brutality to the physics of the partnering, which is
The secrecy of the artist on the stage and kind of wanting to like that curiosity. I think curiosity is amazing. How you audit and just kind of dissect of what that person's meaning is. Is that right? Is that what we're,
yeah.
yeah,
And
okay.
I need the artist to orient me because they are the GPS for their art. I'm not trying to drive their art in any particular direction. That's not my job. And that was probably the hardest part of writing this book, that I don't know the artist who's reading it, and I don't know their work, and I don't know their goals. And so to try to give them thoughts or suggestion or advice was very challenging. And I found myself getting generic and general. And I was like, nope, I've got to make more of a statement. So I did lead from my own lived experience as an artist. And, like, this is how I experience time in making art. And these are all the different places where I might notice time. This is how I experience space. This is how I use it. This is what I've noticed in other people's art with space. What happens for you with space? And so
Yes.
the book does still have a ton of questions in it.
I love that. I love that. Oh, thank you so much for your insight on that. And I can't wait for my listeners to get your book. But let's also turn the page on what gives you joy, especially in this time. I know we are on the struggle bus this year. Oh, since COVID, it's just been like, oh, come on. I even said, I'm like, I'm looking forward to the less drama package for next year. It's my goal. That's a whole nother episode. But what gives you joy, Alexandra? Just seeing you on stage gave me joy watching your videos. But what gives you joy personally, my dear?
Well, I mean, certainly, um, being in my body, when I am prioritizing sensation and really honoring tempo, my tempo. And that looks like different things on different days. Some days it means, there's some part in me that's like, I don't want to, I don't want to, I don't want to, whatever the thing is, and I listen to it, which is something I've only started doing later in life.
Oh,
I will
yes.
say, like, I hit menopause and I really pruned a lot of my people pleasing and my sense of obligation, and prioritizing other people first in every situation. So some days it looks like slowing down, some days it looks like saying no. Um, some days it looks like adapting something. I'm gonna work, but I'm I'm gonna work in bed, and
Mm,
um, I have a real like resistance to taking my supplements, vitamins. There's some little kid part inside of me that's like, oh, I don't want to swallow pills. But
yeah.
I really am trying to commit to my health and improving some things. So instead of just like forcing myself to take my pills, I'm like, I talk to my little kid inside me and I
Hmm.
say, okay, how about like, I do want to take these pills, but how about like we watch some TikTok while we take our pills? Okay. Or
Yeah.
how about we take our pills with something yummy like we'll put some lemonade in the water, and we don't just have water. And so I try to make agreements with different parts of myself, and little kid parts and teenage parts, and try not to railroad myself anymore. And then I do feel like joy just naturally rises up, because I do feel like we are coded for pleasure. I'm going to say, especially people like femmes and female
Mm-hmm.
identifying women.
Yes.
I feel like we are really coded for pleasure, and then we're conditioned against pleasure. So a lot
Hmm.
of it is, again, that same deconditioning and saying, yeah, I get it, but I don't care. I just choose not to
Yes.
care, which is
Yes.
how I've started to behave around the patriarchy. It's like for such a long time we talked about breaking the patriarchy or dismantling the patriarchy. And I've been looking at it lately like, no, I'm just not going to care. I'm just going to ignore it. There are some things that we have to change, like legislatively and
Oh
logistically,
yeah, I'm
right?
right there with you.
There
Yeah, yeah.
science has to get on board, and the justice
Hmm.
system has to get on board, and that kind of thing. The economy's got to get on board. But in terms of the pressure to like look a certain way or act a certain way,
Yeah,
or I'm just like, yeah, I don't care.
I don't
I
care.
don't care, and it just starts to like release its hold.
Yes.
It's like,
So freeing.
yeah.
Yes. Hmm.
Oh, a lot of that was just depended on me agreeing with it, and I just don't agree with
Don't
it.
agree.
And I think
Mm-mm.
most of the power of a lot of the isms is us buying in. And if we're just like,
Yes.
right, accept that race is a construct, if I don't
Hmm.
agree to it
Hmm.
as a metric, it's
Yes.
not
For
that it doesn't
standard.
exist, like skin color
Mm.
exists, but like race doesn't exist, right? Like so
Yes. Oh,
so I think that centering joy, like recognizing that joy is not a byproduct or a
yes.
silver lining, but
Yes.
a goal just as much as productivity or whatever you want to
Mm.
call success or
Yeah.
um, creation. Those are goals, relationship, connection, community. Those are goals. Joy is a goal. It's not a
Yes.
byproduct.
Oh, I love that. Oh, joy is a goal, not a byproduct. Because you're right. You don't get one without the other. You embody that. Oh my gosh, Alexander, you are just, oh, I could talk to you all day. Thank you
Same.
so much for,
Same seas.
oh my gosh. So, where can my listeners find you in the sphere of the world? Yes.
I'm very easy to find. My website is alexandrabellerdances.org, and it's a hub for a lot of different things. Got classes on it and writing and free videos and essays and stuff like that. And um, there's a volume to the website, and you can also use it to find me for mentorship or find my book or find me as a choreographer. And so there's a lot of stuff on there.
Oh, thank you. And I'll definitely have it in the show notes for everyone. Alexandra, thank you so much for being honest, showing your heart, and just giving that full embodiment of how to create a community of safety and security in those courageous conversations with our artists in the dance and theater world. So thank you. Thank you all for tuning in and listening to the Culture Curriculum Chat. Share this with another fellow dancer, artist, or friend who just needs that pick me up, and definitely order Alexandra's book, The Anatomy of Art, on her website so we can share those questions and that self embodiment reflection tool that we all could use. Thanks again, and I'll see you here same time next week. Bye bye.